I'm Nellie, 58 years old, and I've been a nurse in Minneapolis for most of my adult life until retiring last year. I raised my only daughter, Amanda, alone since she was 5, when her father, my husband Thomas, died unexpectedly. Last month, I received an envelope from Amanda. Inside was no wedding invitation, just a $90,000 invoice with a note saying, "You should feel lucky I'm letting you contribute at all." I sat at my kitchen table, hands trembling. Then I smiled. If you're watching this from somewhere warm, drop a comment below and hit subscribe to follow what happened when my daughter tried to use me as her personal ATM. I grew up in a working-class family in Minnesota where we learned the value of hard work and living within our means. I chose nursing as a career because I wanted to help others, and that's where I met Thomas, who came into the ER with a broken arm after a biking accident. We married after 2 years of dating, and when I was 26, we welcomed our beautiful daughter Amanda into the world. Those early years were the happiest of my life, with Thomas working as an engineer, and me taking the night shift at the hospital so we could share childcare duties. Our world shattered when Thomas had a sudden heart attack at age 34. Amanda was only 5 years old, too young to understand why her daddy wasn't coming home. I remember holding her as she cried, promising that I would always take care of her. That promise became my life's mission. After Thomas died, I had to adjust quickly. I took on double shifts at the hospital, sometimes working 16 hours straight, to ensure Amanda would never feel the financial strain of being in a single-parent household. My mother helped watch Amanda when she could, but she had her own health issues, so I often paid for childcare, stretching our budget even thinner. Despite our modest means, I was determined to give Amanda the best life possible. When she showed interest in piano at age 7, I found a way to pay for lessons, even though it meant I couldn't repair our leaking roof for another 6 months. When she begged to attend the private school where her friends went, I picked up weekend shifts to afford the tuition. I skipped lunches at work so Amanda could have the designer jeans the other girls were wearing. Summer camps, special birthday parties, dance lessons, I provided them all. For college, I built a substantial fund by foregoing any vacation for myself for 15 consecutive years. I drove the same car for 20 years, patching it up rather than replacing it all so Amanda could have opportunities. The sacrifice felt worthwhile because initially Amanda was a sweet and appreciative child. She would make me handmade cards for Mother's Day, telling me I was her hero. She excelled in school and seemed to understand the value of hard work. But something changed during her high school years. The sweet girl who appreciated small gestures began to transform into someone who always wanted more. She started comparing our home to her friends' larger houses, our car to their newer models. Shopping trips became battlegrounds when I couldn't afford the exact brands she wanted. "Mom, how embarrassing, everyone will know these aren't real Uggs," she complained once when I bought similar boots from a discount store. "But sweetie, they look exactly the same," I tried to reason. "You just don't understand. You never do," she replied with that teenage disdain that cut deep. By the time Amanda left for college, her materialism had grown concerning. I had saved enough to send her to a prestigious university, hoping the education would help her mature. During her freshman year, she called frequently, but mostly to ask for extra money, beyond her generous allowance. In her sophomore year, Amanda nearly dropped out, not because of academic difficulties, but because she was partying too much and neglecting her studies. I took unpaid leave from work to stay near campus for 2 weeks, helping her get back on track with her classes and find a therapist. At her graduation, I sat alone, tears of pride streaming down my face. I had done it, raised a college graduate all by myself. But when the ceremony ended, Amanda barely acknowledged me, rushing off to take photos with her friends. She gave me a quick hug, thanked me for showing up, then disappeared to a party, leaving me to drive home alone. After college, Amanda moved to New York for a job in fashion marketing. Our communication became increasingly sparse. She called only when she needed something, usually money for rent when she'd overspent on clothes or vacations. I always helped telling myself it was just temporary until she established herself. I continued working as a nurse, my body growing more tired each year. The pandemic was especially brutal, and I realized I couldn't keep up the pace forever. After 35 years of nursing, I finally retired at 57, with a modest pension and retirement savings that would allow me to live frugally but comfortably if I was careful. Around this time, Amanda called to tell me she was dating someone new named Blake. From what I gathered, his family had money, though perhaps not as much as Amanda believed. She brought him to Minneapolis for a brief visit over a holiday weekend. The dinner was awkward. Blake seemed nice enough, polite in a rehearsed way, but clearly intimidated by Amanda. She dominated the conversation, speaking for him whenever I directed questions his way. When I asked about his family, Amanda quickly interjected with stories about their vacation home and business connections. Blake smiled uncomfortably, adding only, "My parents are pretty down to earth, actually." I tried to connect with him, but Amanda kept steering the conversation toward material things, the restaurants they frequented in New York, the exclusive events they attended. When I shared a funny story from my nursing days, Amanda checked her phone and asked if we could wrap up dinner soon because they had an early flight. As they left, Blake shook my hand firmly and said, "It was really nice meeting you, Mrs. Roberts. I can see where Amanda gets her strength." It was the kindest moment of the visit, and for a second, I thought perhaps he saw through Amanda's facade to the good person I knew was still in there somewhere. 6 months after meeting Blake, Amanda called me on a Sunday evening. I was just settling in with a cup of tea and a book when my phone rang. "Mom, I'm engaged!" She practically screamed into the phone. "You should see the ring. It's 4 carats emerald cut platinum band. Blake proposed at 11 Madison Park, and everyone in the restaurant applauded." My heart swelled with happiness for a moment. My little girl was getting married. I would be mother of the bride. "Oh, Amanda, congratulations. Tell me everything. Do you love him? Are you happy?" "Of course I'm happy, Mom," she replied, her tone suggesting my question was ridiculous. "His parents know everyone in New York, and you should see their summer home in the Hamptons. We're thinking of having the wedding there, actually." For the next 20 minutes, Amanda talked about the ring, Blake's family connections, and the exclusive venues they were considering. Not once did she mention love or partnership or building a life together. "We're thinking of keeping it small," Amanda said eventually. "Just an intimate ceremony, maybe 100 people or so." 100 people sounded large to me, but I was relieved. A smaller wedding would be more meaningful and less expensive. "That sounds lovely, dear. I'd be happy to contribute what I can to help with the costs." I offered, mentally setting aside about $5,000 from my retirement savings as a gift. "Thanks, Mom. That's sweet of you," Amanda said, sounding genuinely appreciative for the first time in our call. "I'll keep you posted as we figure things out." After we hung up, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this wedding, this milestone, would bring us closer again. I started looking online at mother of the bride dresses that evening, excited about finding something elegant but affordable. I looked up traditional mother-daughter wedding activities. I imagined helping Amanda choose flowers, tasting cakes together, maybe even having a special lunch before the big day, where I could give her something borrowed and blue. I daydreamed about fixing her veil just before she walked down the aisle, perhaps with Thomas's photo in a small locket, so he could be with us in spirit. Over the next few weeks, my excitement grew even as Amanda's calls became less frequent. When we did speak, the wedding plans seemed to be changing. "We've decided against the Hamptons," she told me in one call. "We found this amazing luxury resort in the Catskills with a waterfall backdrop. It's where that celebrity chef got married last year." In another call, the guest list had grown. "We're at about 200 now. Blake's parents have so many connections and we can't leave anyone important out." Then came the dress. Mom, I found the perfect gown. It's by this French designer, totally exclusive. It's a bit over budget at 15,000, but Blake says I deserve it. Each time I tried to gently ask about costs. That sounds beautiful, sweetie. How are you managing the budget with all these upgrades? Each time, Amanda would respond dismissively. Don't worry about it, Mom. Blake's family is helping and we've got it under control. But 3 months into the engagement, the tone of our conversations shifted. Amanda called on a Tuesday evening sounding tense. So, it turns out Blake's parents aren't contributing as much as we expected, she said without preamble. They're being totally unreasonable about the budget. They say they're old-fashioned and think we should pay for most of it ourselves. Oh, I said carefully. That must be disappointing. Yeah, well, that's where you come in, Mom. As mother of the bride, you're traditionally supposed to help with a lot of this stuff anyway. Blake and I are thinking you could step up a bit more. My stomach tightened. Amanda, honey, I wish I could give you the world, but I'm on a fixed income now. I've set aside $5,000 for you, which is what I can comfortably manage from my retirement savings. The silence on the other end was frigid. 5,000, Mom, that wouldn't even cover the flowers. I thought you'd be contributing at least 40 or 50,000. That's what normal mothers do. Amanda, that's simply not possible. My entire retirement savings is about 120,000, and that needs to last me potentially 20 or 30 years. So you're saying your comfort is more important than the biggest day of my life? Her voice had taken on a familiar, manipulative tone I recognized from her teenage years. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm offering what I can reasonably afford. Whatever, Mom. I need to go. We'll figure something out. She hung up abruptly. For the next 2 weeks, Amanda barely responded to my texts or calls. When she did, her replies were brief and vague. Busy with wedding stuff, or can't talk now. I tried not to worry, telling myself she was just stressed about wedding planning. My friends reassured me that all mother-daughter relationships get tense around weddings, that things would smooth out. I had no idea just how wrong they would be. On a Tuesday morning in April, I checked my mailbox and found a cream-colored envelope with elegant handwriting. My heart lifted, thinking it was finally the wedding invitation. I carried it inside, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at my kitchen table to open it. What I found inside was not an invitation. It was a printed invoice on expensive-looking paper, itemized with wedding expenses, in a neat column, luxury resort venue and catering $45,000, designer wedding dress, $15,000, premium open bar package, $12,000, flowers and decorations, $8,000, Maldives honeymoon package, $10,000, total due $90,000. Attached was a handwritten note on heavy stationery. Mom, as the mother of the bride, these are your responsibilities. You should feel lucky I'm letting you contribute at all, considering our history. Payment expected within 30 days. Don't call until you've sent the check. Amanda. My hands began to shake so badly that I spilled my coffee. The mug shattered on the floor, but I couldn't move to clean it up. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like someone had punched me in the stomach. For several minutes, I just sat there, the invoice in my trembling hands, coffee seeping across the tile floor. $90,000. It was an impossible sum. It represented 3/4 of my entire retirement savings. The money I had carefully set aside through decades of hard work, the fund that was meant to support me through my remaining years. And what did she mean by considering our history? What history justified this kind of demand? I had given everything for Amanda. I had worked double shifts, forgone vacations, driven old cars, lived in our small house instead of upgrading all to provide her with opportunities. What grievances could she possibly be holding that would make this seem reasonable to her? I sat at that table for hours, the coffee drying sticky on the floor. I pulled out photo albums looking at pictures of Amanda growing up, her toothless grin in kindergarten, her first piano recital, her high school graduation. Where had I gone wrong? How had my sweet little girl turned into someone who could send her mother an invoice instead of a wedding invitation? The more I thought about it, the more hopeless I felt. Even if I wanted to, I simply couldn't afford this. My entire retirement savings was $120,000. My pension covered my basic monthly expenses with very little left over. If I gave Amanda $90,000, I would be left with just $30,000 for any emergencies, health issues, or additional expenses for potentially the next 20 to 30 years. It would leave me financially vulnerable for the rest of my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, considering impossible options. Could I take out a loan against my house? Could I return to nursing part-time despite my arthritis? Could I sell my car and use public transportation? Each option seemed more desperate than the last. I almost called Amanda multiple times, my finger hovering over her name in my phone. I imagined myself begging her to reconsider, pleading about my financial situation, perhaps even breaking down in tears. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the coldness of that note. Don't call until you've sent the check. As if I were nothing more than an ATM to her. That night was my lowest point. I felt like a failure as a mother. Despite all my sacrifices, all my efforts to raise her with good values, Amanda saw me as nothing more than a source of funds. I wondered if I had somehow created this situation by always trying to give her the best, by shielding her from financial realities, by saying yes when I should have said no. As the sun rose, I was still awake, eyes swollen from crying, feeling utterly lost about what to do next. The morning after receiving the invoice, my phone rang. It was my younger sister Laura calling for our weekly chat. I hadn't planned to tell her about the invoice, not wanting to burden anyone with my problems, but my voice betrayed me immediately. "Nellie, what's wrong?" "You sound terrible," Laura said. The concern in her voice broke the dam and everything poured out. I told her about the invoice, the cold note, the impossible sum, and my sleepless night, considering desperate measures. "She did what?" Laura practically shouted. $90,000. Has she lost her mind? Laura's outrage was oddly comforting. It validated that I wasn't being unreasonable, that Amanda's demand was truly as outrageous as it felt. "Nellie, listen to me," Laura said firmly. "You've given that girl enough, more than enough. You've sacrificed your whole life for her. This isn't what mothers owe their daughters. This is financial abuse, plain and simple." "But what if she never speaks to me again?" I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. "If she cuts you off because you won't bankrupt yourself for her wedding, then she's not the daughter you raised her to be," Laura replied. "And that would be heartbreaking, but it wouldn't be your fault." That conversation with Laura was the first step in shifting my perspective. I wasn't ready to fully accept her view, but a small seed of validation had been planted. The next day, I met my former nursing colleague Susan for lunch. I hadn't planned to mention the wedding situation, but when she asked how Amanda was doing, I found myself confiding in her too. Susan's reaction was similar to Laura's, but with a nurse's practicality. "Let me get this straight," she said, setting down her fork. "Your daughter, who knows you're on a fixed retirement income, sent you an invoice for $90,000 without even inviting you to the wedding. It's supposedly for—" When she put it that way, it did sound absurd. For the first time in days, I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, more a release of tension, but it felt good nonetheless. "You raised her better than this, Nellie," Susan said, squeezing my hand. "Something's gone very wrong here, and it's not your responsibility to fix it by emptying your bank account." After lunch, I decided to make an appointment with my financial advisor, Martin. I needed to hear from a professional exactly how devastating this expense would be. "Mrs. Roberts, you literally cannot afford this," Martin said bluntly after reviewing my finances. "If you withdraw $90,000 from your retirement accounts, not only will you face significant tax penalties, but you'll be left with insufficient funds for your future needs. He showed me projections of what my financial future would look like with only $30,000 in savings. It was grim. Any major home repair, medical emergency, or assisted living need would quickly deplete my remaining funds. Would Amanda support you financially if you ran out of money in your 70s or 80s? Martin asked. The question hung in the air. Based on the invoice in my purse, the answer was clearly no. 2 days later, I received an unexpected phone call from a woman named Patricia, who introduced herself as Blake's mother. She asked if we could meet for coffee, saying she felt we should talk. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed. Patricia turned out to be a pleasant, down-to-earth woman in her early 60s, dressed simply but elegantly. She got straight to the point after we ordered our drinks. Nellie, I suspect you've received a similar financial demand to what Blake's father and I received, she said, and I wanted you to know that we refused. I was stunned. You did? Patricia nodded. The figures they presented were outrageous. We offered a reasonable contribution, but we're not willing to fund an extravagant event that seems more about impressing strangers than celebrating love. She went on to explain that Amanda had told Blake's family that I was enthusiastically covering most of the wedding costs, while telling me that Blake's parents were contributing less than expected. I thought you should know the truth, Patricia said. Amanda has been playing us against each other, and I don't think that's a healthy way to start a marriage. Meeting Patricia was illuminating. Not only did I gain an unexpected ally, but I also gained more insight into Amanda's manipulations. She wasn't just making unreasonable demands of me, she was actively lying to both families to maximize what she could extract from each of us. That evening, curiosity led me to do something I rarely did. I thoroughly checked Amanda's social media accounts. What I found was eye-opening. She had been posting constantly about her dream wedding, sharing photos of luxury venues, designer dresses, and exotic honeymoon locations. In between these aspirational posts were complaints about budget struggles and how stressful wedding planning was. Most disturbing were posts mentioning that parents were covering the costs with comments from friends expressing how lucky she was, all while she was shopping for $400 shoes and posting photos from expensive restaurants. The next morning, I sat in my small garden with an old photo album. As I flipped through pictures of Amanda growing up, a moment of clarity struck me. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was a pattern that had developed over years. A pattern I had enabled by always trying to give Amanda everything, often at my own expense. I remembered something a therapist had told me years ago when I briefly sought help during Amanda's difficult teenage years. Sometimes our desire to give our children everything they want actually prevents them from developing into the adults we hope they'll become. At the time, I had dismissed the advice, thinking the therapist didn't understand the special bond between Amanda and me, didn't understand my promise to Thomas to give her the best life possible. But sitting in my garden looking at the evidence of a lifetime of sacrifice that had somehow produced this entitled adult, I finally understood. This had to stop. Not just for my financial security, but for Amanda's growth as a person. By continuing to fulfill her increasingly unreasonable demands, I wasn't helping her. I was enabling behaviors that would ultimately make her unhappy. I spent that afternoon writing out a list of all the financial sacrifices I had made for Amanda over the years. Rough estimates of college tuition, private school activities, extra expenses. The total was staggering well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money that could have been in my retirement fund, could have allowed me to retire earlier, and with more security, could have been spent on my own dreams and goals. For the first time, I allowed myself to recognize my own worth, not just as Amanda's mother, but as a person deserving of security and respect. As this realization solidified, a plan began to form. In the days following my epiphany, I was tempted to respond to Amanda with the full force of my hurt and anger. I drafted a scathing email detailing every sacrifice I had made, every instance of her ingratitude, every painful realization about our relationship. I nearly posted a vague comment on her wedding planning posts, something that would make her friends question the fairy tale she was presenting. I even picked up the phone once to call her workplace, thinking I might leave a message asking how someone on her salary could afford such an extravagant wedding. The spite felt satisfying in the moment, but I knew it wasn't the right approach. She expects you to either pay up or have an emotional breakdown that she can use to paint you as the villain, Laura pointed out when we spoke again. You need to be smarter than she's expecting. Susan agreed when we met for coffee. If you respond emotionally, you're playing into her hands. She's counting on you feeling guilty enough to cave or blowing up in a way that justifies her treatment of you. Together, we began strategizing a response that would be firm but not emotional, clear but not attacking, and most importantly, would establish boundaries without permanently damaging the possibility of reconciliation. I also made an appointment with an attorney named Jennifer, who specialized in family law. I needed to understand if I had any legal obligations as mother of the bride. Absolutely not, Jennifer assured me after reviewing the invoice. Parents have no legal obligation to pay for adult children's weddings. This is a request, not a bill with any legal standing. She helped me draft a formal letter that clearly stated my position without unnecessary emotion or accusation. We also discussed strategies for documentation and communication going forward. Document everything, Jennifer advised. Save the invoice, the note, any texts or emails. If this escalates, you want a clear record of what was said and demanded. With Martin, my financial advisor, I created a comprehensive plan to protect my retirement funds. We set up more robust protections for my accounts and created a realistic budget for an appropriate wedding gift that wouldn't compromise my future. $5,000 is actually a very generous gift for someone in your financial position, Martin confirmed. Many parents give much less, particularly those on fixed incomes. The most surprising development came when Blake called me directly. I was gardening when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Roberts, this is Blake Amanda's fiancé, he said, sounding uncomfortable. I'm calling because, well, I just found out about the invoice Amanda sent you, and I wanted to say I had no idea. I'm really sorry. His apology seemed genuine. He explained that Amanda had been handling all the wedding finances, telling him everything was arranged with both sets of parents. He'd only discovered the truth when his mother mentioned their conversation with me. I'm embarrassed and shocked, honestly, Blake said. This isn't how I was raised, and it's not how I thought Amanda was either. He revealed that Amanda had several credit cards he didn't know about and had been spending far beyond their means. The wedding plans had grown increasingly extravagant, despite his suggestions for something more reasonable. I'm starting to wonder if we should postpone, he admitted quietly. If this is how she handles important decisions and communications, I'm not sure we're ready for marriage. I was careful in my response, not wanting to damage their relationship if it could be salvaged, but also not wanting to dismiss the serious concerns he was raising. Financial transparency is very important in a marriage, I said. Perhaps this could be an opportunity for you two to have some important conversations before moving forward. After speaking with Blake, I felt it was important to get a more balanced perspective on Amanda. It would be easy to focus solely on her recent behavior and lose sight of her positive qualities. I reached out to Mrs. Richardson, Amanda's favorite high school teacher, who had always had a good relationship with her. Over tea, Mrs. Richardson reminded me of Amanda's intelligence, her creativity, and her capacity for kindness that I hadn't seen in recent years. She shared stories of Amanda helping younger students with their projects, of her insightful class discussions, of her potential beyond materialistic concerns. There's a good person in there, Nellie, Mrs. Richardson assured me. Sometimes young people lose their way a bit, especially if they get caught up in certain social circles. But the core person you raised is still in there. This conversation helped me approach my response with more compassion, even as I maintained firm boundaries. I spent several days crafting the perfect letter, one that wasn't reactive or emotional, that set clear boundaries without attacking Amanda personally, and that left the door open for reconciliation, while making the consequences of her choices clear. A week after receiving the invoice, I sent my formal response to Amanda. I chose to send it by certified mail, so there would be no question about whether she received it. The letter was simple, dignified and clear. Dear Amanda, I've received your invoice for $90,000 for wedding expenses. I want to be very clear. I will not be paying this amount. As you know, I am on a fixed retirement income, and such an expense would compromise my financial security for the remainder of my life. As I previously mentioned, I have set aside $5,000 as a wedding gift for you and Blake. This represents a significant portion of my discretionary savings, and it is given with love. I would be honored to attend your wedding should you still wish to invite me. Regardless of your decision about my attendance, the $5,000 gift remains available to you. I have always loved you and always will. I hope we can move forward from this with mutual respect and understanding. Love, Mom. I included a check for $5,000 with the letter, making my commitment to that amount clear and concrete. Amanda's response came within hours of the letter's delivery, not as a phone call or formal reply, but as a barrage of text messages. I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything I've been through because of you, you never supported me the way other moms support their daughters. If you don't pay, don't bother coming to the wedding. Actually, you're not invited anyway. Hope you enjoy being alone while I get married. This is the last time I'm asking you for anything. Don't expect to be part of my life after this. The messages continued growing increasingly desperate and accusatory. I read them all, but didn't respond immediately, giving both Amanda and myself time to process. Over the next few days, Amanda escalated her efforts. She called my sister Laura, my brother-in-law, and even a couple of my closest friends, telling them how unreasonable I was being, how I was ruining her special day out of spite. Fortunately, I had already spoken with most of them, so they understood the real situation. On social media, Amanda began posting vague statements about toxic family members and how some people can't be happy for your joy. She never mentioned me specifically, but the target was clear to anyone who knew us. Blake called me once during this period, sounding stressed and conflicted. "She's been asking me to talk to you to convince you to reconsider," he admitted. "I've told her I don't feel comfortable doing that, but she's very upset." I thanked him for his honesty and reiterated that my decision was final, but that I harbored no ill will toward either of them and hoped they would have a wonderful wedding day, with or without my presence. Then 3 days after receiving my letter, Amanda showed up at my house unannounced on a Saturday morning. When I opened the door, she was standing there in designer sunglasses, looking both angry and tearful. "Can I come in?" she asked, not waiting for an answer before brushing past me into the living room. For the first few minutes, she cried, large tears rolling down her cheeks as she paced the room. Then her emotion shifted to anger. "I don't understand how you can do this to me," she said. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? I've told everyone about our venue, our plans. Now we'll have to scale everything back and people will know." "Amanda," I said calmly, "a wedding isn't about impressing people with how much money you spend. It's about celebrating your commitment to Blake." "That's easy for you to say," she retorted. "You had a tiny wedding that nobody remembers." The comment stung. My wedding to Thomas had indeed been small, a garden ceremony with 50 guests, but it had been one of the happiest days of my life. Amanda continued listing grievances from her childhood, most of which revolved around material things I couldn't afford. Do you know how it felt when Sophie Miller got a brand new car for her 16th birthday and I got your old Honda? Or when Kylie's mom took their whole family to Europe and the best vacation I ever got was a road trip to the Grand Canyon? Or how Mom and Dad Richardson bought Zach a condo after college, but I had to rent that awful apartment with roommates? The comparisons continued, each one revealing how Amanda had always measured her life and my love by material standards I could never meet. She had always been comparing our modest means to her friends' wealthier families, and in her mind, I had always fallen short. "If you loved me, you'd find a way to pay," she finally said. "Real mothers make sacrifices for their children." In that moment, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I understood now that no amount of money would ever be enough because the issue wasn't actually about money. It was about Amanda's perception of love and worth, which had become distorted somewhere along the way. "Amanda," I said quietly but firmly, "I have made sacrifices for you your entire life. I worked double shifts when you were young, so you could have piano lessons and private school. I drove old cars and lived in a small house so you could have nice clothes and summer camps. I skipped vacations for 15 years to build your college fund. Every decision I made was with your well-being in mind." I took a breath before continuing. "But I love you enough to say no this time. I love you enough not to bankrupt myself for a single day, no matter how special. And I love you enough to believe that you're better than this, that the daughter I raised would never want her mother to live in financial insecurity just so she could have a fancier party." Amanda stared at me, clearly not expecting this response. She had anticipated either guilty compliance or emotional outburst, not calm, loving boundary setting. "So that's it. You won't help me at all," she demanded. "I offered you $5,000, which is a significant gift from someone in my financial position," I reminded her. "That offer still stands." "$5,000 won't even cover the floral arrangements," she exclaimed. "It's nothing." "Then nothing is what you'll have from me," I replied steadily. "Because my financial security isn't negotiable, Amanda. I'm sorry if that disappoints you." Her face hardened. She stood up abruptly, grabbing her designer purse. "Fine. Here's your last chance. Pay for the wedding I deserve or don't come. That's the choice." "I love you, Amanda. I hope someday you'll understand," was all I said. "Don't bother coming to the wedding," she snapped. "In fact, don't expect to hear from me again. A real mother would never do this." With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through my quiet house, and I sat there for a long time afterward, feeling both heartbroken and strangely at peace. In the days leading up to what would have been the wedding, I received no invitation. Through mutual connections, I learned that Amanda and Blake had significantly downsized their plans, moving the venue from the luxury resort to a still lovely but much more reasonably priced hotel in the city. On what would have been Amanda's wedding day, I volunteered at the hospital where I had worked for so many years, helping with a blood drive. I kept my phone nearby, part of me still hoping for a last-minute call or text, an invitation to slip into the back of the ceremony, perhaps. It never came. That evening, Patricia Blake's mother called me. "I thought you should know," she said gently. "The wedding was postponed. They're saying it's due to issues with the venue, but Blake told us privately that he's insisted they get premarital counseling before proceeding." According to Patricia, several guests had declined to attend after hearing about Amanda's behavior. Blake had grown increasingly concerned about the pattern of financial secrecy and manipulation, and had finally put his foot down. "I'm sorry, Nellie," Patricia said. "This must be very difficult for you." "It is," I admitted, "but maybe it's for the best. They clearly have some things to work through before marriage." As I hung up the phone, I felt a complex mix of sadness, relief, and hope. Perhaps this crisis would lead to growth for both Amanda and Blake. And maybe, just maybe, it would eventually lead to healing, between my daughter and me. 3 months passed with no word from Amanda. I focused on rebuilding my life, creating routines that nurtured my well-being, rather than revolving around Amanda's needs and demands. I joined a weekly meditation group at the community center. I volunteered regularly at the hospital, finding purpose in helping others. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my working years. Most importantly, I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Morris, who helped me process my feelings about Amanda and develop healthier boundaries. "You did the right thing," Dr. Morris assured me during one of our sessions. "Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is set firm boundaries. It teaches adult children that actions have consequences and that relationships must be based on mutual respect, not exploitation." We met weekly, untangling years of guilt and misplaced responsibility. I began to see how my own upbringing had led me to equate sacrifice with love, and how I had inadvertently taught Amanda that my value was in what I could provide materially. "Healthy love has boundaries" became my mantra, a simple phrase I repeated to myself whenever guilt or doubt crept in. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, an email appeared in my inbox from Amanda. My heart raced as I clicked to open it. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask, but would it be possible for us to meet? There have been some changes in my life, and I owe you an explanation and an apology. If you're willing, maybe we could have coffee at that place near your house. You always liked Amanda." The message was brief but striking in its difference from her usual communications. No demands, no accusations, and most notably, an offer to come to me rather than expecting me to accommodate her. I replied simply, "Saturday at 10 a.m. Harper's Cafe. I'll be there." That Saturday, I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a quiet table by the window. I was nervous, unsure what to expect. When Amanda walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and flashy accessories. She wore simple jeans, a plain sweater, and her hair was pulled back naturally. She looked younger, somehow more like the girl I remembered. She approached hesitantly, as if unsure of her welcome. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Hello, Amanda. It's good to see you," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. For a moment after she sat down, neither of us spoke. Then, to my surprise, Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I've been horrible to you. Worse than horrible. I don't even know if you can forgive me, but I needed to tell you that I know how wrong I was." I handed her a napkin, giving her time to compose herself. "What happened, Amanda?" I asked gently. Over the next hour, Amanda shared her story. The wedding had indeed been postponed, but not because of venue issues. Blake had called it off after discovering more financial deceptions, including credit card debt Amanda had hidden from him. "He said he couldn't marry someone he couldn't trust with finances," Amanda explained, wiping her eyes. "And he was right. I wasn't trustworthy. I was living in a fantasy, trying to have this Instagram perfect life that I couldn't afford." Shortly after the wedding was canceled, Amanda lost her job. She had taken too much time off for wedding planning, and her performance had suffered. With no income and substantial debt, she couldn't afford the rent on her luxury apartment and had to move out. "I moved in with my friend Steph, temporarily sleeping on her couch," Amanda continued. "It was humiliating, but it was also a wake-up call. For the first time in my adult life, no one was bailing me out. I had to face the consequences of my choices." During those difficult weeks, Amanda had done a lot of reflection. She had begun to recognize patterns in her behavior, the constant striving for material status, the belief that her worth was tied to what she owned or how impressive her life appeared to others. "I started thinking about where that came from," she said. "It wasn't from you. You always taught me the value of hard work and caring for others. Somewhere along the way, I got lost." For the first time, Amanda and I had a truly honest conversation. I shared financial realities I had sheltered her from during childhood, like the times I had to choose between fixing the car and buying her the school trip she wanted. I explained the genuine financial impossibility of her wedding demands, showing her my retirement statements and monthly budget. Amanda listened with new eyes, seeing for the first time the concrete realities of my financial situation, rather than the endless resource she had imagined. "I had no idea," she said, repeatedly, looking genuinely shocked at the numbers. "I never wanted you to worry about money as a child," I explained. "But perhaps in protecting you from that stress, I didn't teach you enough about financial reality." "It wasn't your fault, Mom," Amanda insisted. "You gave me everything, more than everything. I just always wanted more, and I never stopped to think about what it cost you." As our conversation continued, I shared my own realizations from therapy. "I think I enabled some of your expectations," I admitted. "I wanted so badly to give you everything that I sometimes said yes when I should have said no. I measured my worth as a mother by your happiness, even when that happiness came from material things." "But that's not what actually made me happy," Amanda said, a new insight seemingly occurring to her in that moment. "The times I remember being happiest as a kid were when we would bake cookies together, or when you would read to me before bed, or when we would go for walks in the park. None of that cost anything." For the first time in years, maybe ever, we were seeing each other clearly, without the distortions of guilt, expectation, or materialism. "Would you be willing to try family therapy with me?" Amanda asked as our meeting drew to a close. "I want to rebuild our relationship, but I want to do it right, this time." I agreed, readily touched by her initiative and willingness to do the work. We found a family therapist named Dr. Levine and began weekly sessions the following month. The path to healing wasn't smooth or immediate. There were difficult conversations, painful realizations, and occasional setbacks. But there was also growth for both of us. Amanda found a new job, much more modest than her previous position, working as an administrative assistant at a nonprofit. She moved into a small studio apartment, living within her means for perhaps the first time in her adult life. We established a new tradition of Sunday dinner at my house each week. It wasn't fancy, usually just a simple home-cooked meal, but it gave us regular time to rebuild our connection. 6 months after our coffee shop reunion, Amanda surprised me by asking if she could volunteer with me at the hospital. "I want to give back," she explained. "I've taken so much for so long. It's time I learned to give instead." Watching her interact with patients, showing genuine compassion and care, I glimpsed the person she was becoming, someone more aligned with the values I had tried to instill all those years ago. A year after the invoice incident, Amanda had transformed in ways I never expected. She lived simply, but seemed genuinely happier. She had started dating again, a kind teacher named David, who shared her newfound values of simplicity and service. For my birthday that year, instead of asking for an expensive gift as she once would have, Amanda gave me a handmade photo album filled with pictures of us throughout the years, with thoughtful captions about memories we shared. "I still want to get married someday," she told me over dinner that night. "But when I do, it won't be about the venue or the dress or impressing people. It will be about love and commitment, like your wedding to Dad was." The mention of Thomas brought tears to my eyes. "He would be so proud of who you're becoming," I told her truthfully. As I reflect on the journey we've taken, I realize that the $90,000 invoice, as painful as it was at the time, was actually a gift in disguise. It forced a reckoning that both Amanda and I needed. It broke the unhealthy patterns we had been locked in for decades and created space for something new and healthier to grow. I've learned that sometimes love means saying no, that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. That my worth as a mother isn't measured by what I provide materially, but by the values I instill and the boundaries I maintain. Amanda has learned that happiness can't be bought, that relationships matter more than status, and that genuine connection requires honesty and respect, not manipulation and demands. Our relationship today isn't perfect, but it's authentic in a way it never was before. We're building something that money truly can't buy: mutual respect, honest communication, and love with healthy boundaries. The $90,000 invoice was the best thing that ever happened to our relationship because it forced us to build something. Money can't buy truth and respect. Has anyone else had to make a difficult decision that ultimately strengthened a relationship? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life lessons. And remember, sometimes the hardest no is the most loving gift you can give. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to set loving boundaries in your own life.